Yeah, it's interesting about the just going back to your point of things being down, people less interested. When Icosa first came out, the prices were the yield was crazy. You're making. I'm looking at the thing. I'm like, wow, it's over like 100%, and it's only been like a few months or so. But that's the funny thing about money printers is you could talk about the game theory. You could say, okay, this new coin, whatever comes out, it's printing money. It's printing money. But if that money goes way down, people stop caring about how much money it's printing
Yep.
because the money in dollar terms is not worth as much. Is there something there where, for example, I think it's an interesting case with Icosa where the yield and Hedron too, but Icosa, yield it was seeded and it was like much bigger the first year, all that stuff. So a lot of people have all this Icosa that they've been getting as yield, and it looks like nothing right now. And then are they going to get rid of it because it's not worth anything now? What if they hang on to it and the prices go back to where they were before, and then they realize all that, like, how do you think some of that's going to shake out as far as people looking at it and just being like, oh, that money printer sucks? But what if money printer doesn't suck later on?
Exactly. So that's kind of the whole thing, and that's kind of what we're speculating on. And the money printer has kind of turned off now. So Icosa has inflationary and deflationary mechanics where it'll print lots of inflation when you have lots of people doing lots of volume in the HSI auctions, like trading in through the HSI buyback. But once all of those kind of auctions are cleared out, you're going to have sort of a disinflationary version of Icosa, potentially even deflationary, depending on how many people are staking. So in terms of the price appreciation, right now, we've earned some good yield. Obviously, you probably could have just sold short your coins and bought back a bigger bag later. But I mean, here's the thing. If Icosa, if it does decide to perform well, and like you were saying, like the coins aren't worth a lot now, but let's say these coins maybe even get 50% back to ceiling price, people could be a lot more incentivized to go and use that HSI buyback and maybe trade in some other HSIs. Maybe they got a deal somewhere, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. One reason or another, they trade in their HSI, and that could actually kick off the yield in the Icosa system again and start printing you more coin, as well as if that Icosa price did reach near its ceiling, you would assume that it would have more value in USD, also more value relative in HEX, and assuming HEX has like maintained its like store value, right? You're gonna be able to start not only keeping your original bag of Icosa that you yielded with, but let's say the yield and the money printer starts to kick back on once the price turns back on, you could start earning more yield on that. So right now, the system, it does not look good from like an outsider's perspective, but if you're still paying attention, if you know where these things could go, if you're, I guess you could say, bullish on Icosa potentially one day hitting the ceiling price or close to it in a bull market, you could see that inflation turn right back on and people start printing money again, and that'll happen when Icosa sort of is at a higher price, right, in terms of hex and probably in terms of US dollar, assuming that maybe we're in a good macro bull market condition. So
Hmm.
go ahead.
I was just going to say that's so the key is price go down. So the auctions, there's not as much going to auctions because people don't want to trade them in. Kind of price go down to affected this particular feedback loop and stuff more than maybe other ecosystems. That's why everything kind of looks depressed and it looks like it's not working, but it's like, well, the price is just down. That's why it's not working.
Exactly. That's the easiest way to put it probably. I see in the chat like my $2,500 Hedron bang sunk after PLS launched. I think that was a case with a lot of people, even with the Icosa got split in half, and then even now, like when EHEX was at a penny, I think last time that happened during the Pulse launch, Icosa was closer to like 12 cents, 10 cents, 8 cents at least. But now it's really slacking behind, and Hex is it's sort of it has pumped a lot, and it's leaving everything behind, even Pulse and PHEX to a certain extent for that first little gain. But we haven't seen Icosa and or Hedron enter a bull market, and they're also disgustingly cheap right now. Like I think you can get 1 billion Hedron for. I'll take a look at the price, but it is not that expensive currently. So yeah, 1 billion Hedron I think is about $128 right now on Ethereum and $143 on PulseChain. So before these would cost a couple of couple of $1,000s. So prices have come down significantly. And to put it in perspective, if you wanted to mint a billion Hedron, it would cost you 180 T shares for 15 years, and you would have to wait out that entire duration to actually be able to mint all that Hedron. But you can pick it up right now on market for like 100 odd bucks. So our bags, yes, did sink a lot, but Alex hasn't posted any updates, so everyone's not really kind of paying attention. And if you kind of want to go contrary into the market, you don't need I don't think you need a huge bag size to get a quite decently sized position in this ecosystem. I could take a look at the exact numbers for like whale accounts, at least in Icosa right
Okay.
now. I'll take a look here. So yeah, right now Icosa, to make a whale account, I believe it's around 160,000, 178,000. So right now that would cost maybe 10 grand, 20 grand, 25 grand ish. So that's for a whale position in this ecosystem. Now, I'm not exactly sure how bullish everyone is on Icosa, and I don't exactly recommend buying a whale size position. That's not really for everyone. But to buy a whale size position in HEX, to buy a whale size position in PulseChain, to buy a whale size position in PulseX is a very, very expensive thing to do. So if you want to like own a percent of Icosa, it is relatively cheap comparatively to like the percent of the ecosystem you're getting. And the sort of thing happens time and time and time again, where if you own a fraction of a percent of some sort of coin or ecosystem and it ends up doing even mediocrely well, you could see insane returns on that because you own a whale size stack in that ecosystem, and that is a very hard it's not necessarily an easy thing to do to become a whale in an ecosystem. Even in Hex, I know they started out with like, I think 6,000 members in the Telegram, and that was during 2019, 2020. Ethereum gas fees were not that bad. I heard Richard Hart talking about potentially needing to build a layer one if Ethereum fees got out of control, and people would laugh at him for this idea. They would think he's like, "Why would we need a layer one? Like Ethereum gas fees aren't that expensive." But then the bull market came. You had the whole pulse chain catalyst, and that's really what made Hex do a 10,000x. And if you went back to like, I guess max depression, like bottom of the Hex chart, and you said, well, this coin's going to do a 10,000x, and the reason why is because the founder is going to raise, let's say, $1 billion in a sacrifice for a new layer one, no one would believe you. Everyone would look at you crazy. Ethereum gas fees weren't even an issue, so why would you need another layer one? And how would you raise $1 billion for it, right? But those were all
Mm.
catalysts for Hex doing a 10,000x. And if you predicted that from the very start, then you were probably on some like god tier stuff. But many people didn't, right? So
Shout
I
out to
think
Godwell.
yeah. So I think many people, we say this all the time in crypto, is we overestimate how low things can go, and we underestimate how high things can go as well. So there's always that kind of like duality there.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point too about just being able to, everyone has their different goals and things they want to do in crypto, and it's so much of it revolves around, oh, I want to get a coin, I want to go a bunch of X's, and I want to sell it. Like that's like the traditional common way of thinking about all this stuff. And it's interesting to think about it in the way of positions. Like I want to be, I see this coin, I see something new coming out. If you said, hey, I want to be a Hexwell back when it was super, super cheap. I mean, relatively speaking, it was super, super cheap when it first came out compared to what it did now. And you may think what it is now is cheap compared to other stuff too. But in any coin, Hedron, Icosa, Hex, like whatever it is, getting the position and saying, okay, based on this, like I want to be this position, the goal being this position, instead of goal being, I wanted to do this many X's. That's a cool thing to think about, because especially if your goal is to be a whale in one of these things, you're like, okay, I'm going to be a whale. I think this thing's going to go great. You don't even know how many X's that is, but it's probably a lot if it does well. So I like that like trying to, it's almost like a mental model of like positioning in crypto, part of an investment thesis type of thing of like, being an animal, being some
Yeah,
kind of position instead of the X's, which I don't think a lot of people cover.
I really like how our ecosystem kind of, I think we sort of started the whole like shark, whale, squid crab, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think we really like took that off, and I like that whole idea of framing it because it's hard to kind of like it's hard to know where your bag is sitting relative to other people, I guess relative to like total supply, unless you sort of know these figures and you know like 1% is a whale, or like 0.01% is this and 0.001% is that. And if you can like set targets for like accumulation, like I want to become a shark in this ecosystem, and you just set a target for that, and maybe you stop DCAing after, or you can continue to like just do whatever you want to do, right? But it is a good way to look at things where if you own just a percent of an ecosystem, like a percent of HEX, percent of PulseChain, and it does significantly well, you will do significantly well just as a byproduct. So, I mean, yeah, I see validator dashboard in here. It says long-term mindset is key. And I think that's absolutely right, man. Like in crypto, we see this time and time and time again. The longer you hold, traditionally, not in all cryptos, but in the ones that we're in, I hope, and like Bitcoin, Ethereum, the blue chips, they'll all make new all-time highs, and they all just keep on going up into the right forever, right? Even some of the stocks and stuff, like the longer you hold them, the more returns you would have made for sure, right? Like if you have been holding stocks now for 20 plus years, you're up, if you were picking the right stocks, maybe thousands of percent, right? Whereas you wouldn't have made 1,000% in like 2 years in the stock market unless like you're some sort of like I don't know anyone necessarily who's doing that, but maybe there is. So